Well, hello and welcome, my little army of piglins. Now, unless you've had your head buried in the
I
sand
don't like sand.
for the past several months,
It's coarse, rough, and irritating.
you will know that the new Minecraft movie will soon be dropping the proverbial anchor on our shores.
And it gets everywhere.
Now, I myself have been a devout player of Minecraft for many years now.
That's not true. That's a lie.
I love mining for valuable digital materials, fighting creepers and zombies,
You sit on a throne of lies.
and 100% knew exactly what an axolotl was before the game was popularized.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
And with that in mind, for this week's sculpt, I had a look at the Minecraft Emporium and decided to make a monstrous Enderman.
Enderman.
It's spelt Enderman.
Enderman. We're mad.
I chose the Enderman as I am a chronic horror hound and love the Slenderman lore, and I've read that the Enderman may be loosely based on Slenderman.
Where's your proof? If you don't have any proof, this is slander.
Well, I don't have any. So let's get into it, shall we? Though I am making my own interpretation of the Enderman, I do want to maintain the proportions. Here, I'm quickly going to sketch out the dimensions that I found online. And with the shape all drawn out, I can pen in the armature profile before flipping the page to sketch out what I am envisaging. To explain exactly where my mind went with this, I thought Endermen have no hands or feet. Hands and feet are hard to sculpt. Pointy things are easy to sculpt. Hence, pointy appendages. Our Enderman will require the requisite subcutaneous steely skeleton, to which I will mark out my predetermined hinge joints by way of green masking tape. I will of course leave some fluff at the end of the legs to wedge into the cork blocks that I use as oven-friendly temporary base. Now this wire may be steel, but it's pretty thin, thus I can simply bend the limbs into the position using my sketch as a reference. And once I'm happy with the attack stance, I'll whip out my Christmas present 3 months later to play with some coloured souffle clay for the first time. This pack contains 12 colours, unless you're one of those purists that don't consider black and white colours, in which case you have 10 colours, 2 shades. But for the purpose of today, we only need the one.
I want a purple one.
And I want the Enderman skin to look marbled, like a good wagyu. So to achieve this, I'll need a potato of black primo into a long snaky boy, and then do the same thing to the purple, but use significantly less. I'll then roll them together, just enough that they marble, but don't mix. I will then apply a test layer to the leg after adding extra jewelry wire, but this clay just won't stick. So this brings me back to Old Faithful, a bit of bacon bond, which I can apply to the leg after mixing up a larger batch of ender skin. As I guess most of us do in the morning, I'll start by giving this fella some disco pants. I'll then load up the upper body with a matching Saturday Night Fever sweater vest before smoothing out the covered areas and adding in some exposed ribs to highlight the emaciation. I firstly open it up a little bit with a sharper tool and then take a ball stylus to round out those ribs and really give them depth. To give the back some realism, I'll stick on 2 thick lats and a noodly doodad for a spine. And to make the spine look exceptionally detailed and gnarly, I'll mark in each vertebrae and then use 2 similarly sized ball styluses to pinch in some knobbly bits. And for reasons best left unknown to editor Keith, 5 AM pre-real job sculpting Keith decided it was a great idea to give this monster Demi Moore 3rd act The Substance hips. With the hips in place and far from lying, I'll make up another batch of skin, but this time I'm going to show off my clay extruder, but honestly the end result was the exact same as using my little fingies. I then took a break to shave my back with an X-Acto blade, and once I was done, I shaved the Enderman's back with the X-Acto blade as he was looking like he could lap pull down the entire stack, and he ain't no C-bomb.
Skinny bitch.
With the summer cut in place, I can get to work on a stabby feat. Now, don't think too much about the mechanics of how he stays up, because I sure didn't. But what I did do was look at seafood. I mean, marine wildlife. I looked at marine wildlife. That's what I said.
Fish are friends, not food.
I used one of my scrapers with a bit of a pointy head to carve out the random shapes for an organic serrated edge to the back of the leg. And using a round stylus, I can clean up the rougher edges and use a silicone soft shaper for additional texturing. With that done, I'll repeat the process on the left leg before washing the entire body in a heavy coat of isopropyl alcohol and into the oven for 30 minutes we go. You can see that the Primo bakes in a lovely matte finish, but this is not what we're after here, but we'll address that later. For now, we'll apply the arms in much the same way that we did the legs. I'll put down a base layer bacon bond followed by the initial foundational clay layer, atop which I can build up my murderous stabby dagger arms. With the bulk of the arms in place, I'll steer my attention toward the delts, which will go on as a collection of muscles, and then I'll add in the clavicle. Fun fact, I once broke mine, and it was 0 stars out of 5, much like 2020. Would not recommend. Sinister as this guy will undoubtedly look, I still want him to look like he'll struggle with door frames, and hence I will be adding elbow spikes. And while I have the cutter clay out, I'll also make his big buggy eyes. I got the gloves on for this to avoid any fingerprints, as these items are just too small to bother with alcohol before bake. The forelimbs can be attributed the same serrated edges as the calves before I wedge in the Lady Gaga elbow pads and secure them in place with a wee noodle of clay. I wasn't thrilled with the shape of one of the spikes, so I took it out and just shaved it down with a blade a smidge before repositioning it back onto the elbow. We can then do a quick check with our sketch, make sure 90's computer kit approves, and it's into the oven once again. With the body in the oven, we can move on to the head. Now this head does end up being quite a bit larger than the sketch, but I figure that's on brand, for the Endermen seem to suffer with macrocephaly or large head syndrome. Once I've added 2 divots for the eyes, I'll add pre-baked eyes and open up that mouth. I'm just getting the key features in place initially, and then I'll build up the rest as we go. Starting with a spacer between the eyes, then a small loop around the eye sockets. I can blend these in, and as the eyes are pre-baked, I can use a sharp shaper to push the skin off the eyeballs cleanly. I'll then exaggerate the eyebrow ridge and do a quick check with the body to see how they work together. I'll bulk up the top of the head and refine the mouth. The back of the skull requires a wee trim, and I can add in some much needed bone structure. I'll first pat out beneath each of the eyes before applying some gums to either side of the mouth, and then finally the bottom lip. I then felt he needed some LA style cheek implants, but you know, not in a tasteful way.
What are you trying to say, darling?
And with all those lumps and bumps in place, I can smooth them all together and attach the head to the body loosely, leaving me a gummy, grumpy looking Enderman.
Get off my lawn.
Next, to contrast the blackness of the head, I plan on making the mouth inners purple, which I can roll into position and just vibe. The mouth then gets a rib texture for your pleasure, and then I'll make some teeth for you via time-lapse. To To aid the teeth into the gums, I poke in receiving holes, so beware if you suffer from trypophobia.
Trypophobia, the repulsion or aversion to objects like honeycombs and sponges that have little holes in them.
A word I never knew nor thought existed until I went down a YouTube sculpting rabbit hole. I mean, all my fears are completely rational. Sharks, skydiving with a faulty parachute, eventually having to pay for my sins, hitting my daily protein intake, all things Australia related, cats with too much attitude. Just all normal things. Okay, we may have got a little sidetracked there, but you can see that I've made the tongue with a single piece of armature wire with 2 prongs on the end. The point of this is that I stab the 2 prongs into the still soft clay of the mouth, because that'll just have a lot more support than the single. I give the tongue's armature a quick finger dab of bacon bond and build up the flesh. The bacon bond actually makes the souffle clay pretty soft and leaves a nice little texture when shaped. I'll use a soft but sharp shaper to add the mid-tongue fissure, or median sulcus, as the dentists say in their bougie dentist way down at the club. To attach the head to the body, I'll start by stuffing the base of the skull with some very well massaged clay and mounting that onto the exposed steel neck. I'll then give this bridging point the same treatment I did the back earlier and bake again. That's 4 bakes for whoever's counting. Failure is my greatest teacher, and to that end, today we're making veins. And to make said veins, I'll mix some purple paint with some bacon bond and loosely drape it over choice positions with reckless abandon before baking and painting the body.
Look at that, babe.
The paint job here is as simple as it gets. Make the matte bits shiny. To do this, I'll mix black paint, a high gloss varnish, a few drops of water, and just go ham all over it. And with that all done, I'm getting some very weird latex related feelings and flashbacks to my childhood.
Here's Johnny.
Similarly, I'll make a purple glaze and paint. Similarly, I'll make a purple glaze and paint the tongue, the elbow spikes, the mouth and the eyes before gluing the tongue in place. Once the paint dries, I'll add a coat of UV resin to the eyes using a toothpick to push it into all the nooks and crannies before finishing the mouth off with a high gloss varnish and moving on to the base. Words are hard. I've got my standard MDF block that I picked up from the local art store for $2. And I use this as a template to size some plastic card, which I'll be using as the top layer. To mark out the floor tiles, I make up a 10 by 10 grid doing 100% of zero research into the game's relative scale. I didn't record it, but trust me, I scored in the tile pattern using a ball stylus to hopefully pick up some paint later. I'll apply Super Bond cement glue to both card and the MDF, making sure to rub the glue to all the edges and then leave it alone for 20 minutes with a couple of heavy books on top. Take it away to prime and make some blocks. So I started with 20 by 20s, but my base is 100 by 150, so I need these to be 10 by 10s. In the spirit of being non-wasteful in this current climate, I'll use these cubes to my advantage and simply score them with a scale ruler, turning my single big cube into 8 little blocks. I'll chop up the rest accordingly and then shake them up in a lunchbox with some rocks. I'll then prime the lot in a Mod Podge and white acrylic mixture to seal the foam, and then add the base color for my blocks that I want to resemble the end. Well, I guess clicking didn't work on that one, so what I'm going to do is take bulk acrylic white paint and mix that with a little bit of Vallejo paint to get the color that I want. And then with a little bit of XPS foam cut out into a little cube, I'll mount that on a toothpick and sporadically dab around various shades of brown all over the tiled surface. With that dry, I'll tie it all together with a wash composed of a burnt sienna, white, water and flow improver. By way of demonstration, I'll apply a layer to half the base and dab away the excess with some kitchen roll. And you can see here that it really just seeps into all those cracks nicely, and it also ends up in the corners where the little raised bricks are, which gives it that realistic effect that it's really settled over time. And this is the finished product, and I'm pretty happy with how that all turned out. Making a little hole to mount our fella on, and we will use a makeup brush from the dollar store to give this a little bit of a dry brushing, bring out some of those edges to highlight. And for the sides, I'll just take a black acrylic and give them a once over, and then we can move on to some far from cubish headshots. A big old thank you to all that joined me today. I had a lot of fun making this Enderman and do hope you enjoyed it too. Let me know in the comments if you're going to see the Minecraft movie next weekend, or who's your favorite character, the best hero, the best villain. I want to know. Do all that good stuff below, like, share, subscribe, and until next time, go make a mess.